Good morning, everyone. This is Patrick at Qdabra Software, and welcome to our weekly webinar. Thank you for joining. We've had a bit of a hiatus last 3 weeks. We've been very busy and haven't had a chance to join you on Thursday and do our webinar thing, so I'm happy to be back. We have a two-part series starting today on migration. Before I go much further, I am recording. I want to make sure I have audio. I've tested audio on my side, but if you can hear me, please raise your hand. That'll give me a quick indication that we can start. Thanks, Barbara. Thanks, Daniel, and other people. Got quite a full house today. I'm happy to have everyone here. I do have a short poll. We're going to do a couple demos. We're going to go through part one of the migration scenario. Well, there's actually three, but today's agenda is really to look at these three scenarios and talk about data connections because they are dastardly. And we're going to talk about a couple other issues that come up when you're using UDCX files. I'm going to show you some demos. And before we get started, let's do a quick poll and see how people are actually doing migration today. So I'm going to launch this poll here. You should see a pop-up with a question. It's just a 5-answer question here. And we'll get quick feedback on how you're doing your migration. And it looks like about 52% of you have voted, so I'll let it go a little bit longer here, get 75% or so, and hopefully and I'll report on the findings. We've got 64%. We need a few more votes here, and then I'll give you the feedback. Okay, now we're close to 70. So, and we have more people joining, so that's one of the problems. So, yeah, so the poll, how do you migrate today with the misspelling on the do? Most of you are republishing the forms, 47%, and then second up is we don't do any migration today. About 40%. There's a kind of it's changing as I go now. We're at 80%. So now it's 42 and 42 for those top two. And then the third one is trying to use tools like Metalogics. Okay, so that's a quick poll for you. Sorry about the misspelling. So this is important. Now, why is this important? And I want to kind of go over the reason here. That number one, it's because it's a best practice. We don't want to do our development on our production environment, right? And that's, and therefore you want to publish your production, you get everything working, you have some change. So instead of just making the change to your production environment, you really ought to create a separate development environment, right? Separate server, separate site, whatever it is, maybe it's just a separate library, and publish your form out to there first, make your changes, verify that the changes are good, and then move them back to production. So that's the main reason why we're talking about this today. It comes up a lot. We were just on site with a customer last week, and one of the main topics of discussion was migrating, and this was the scenario, the dev to prod and back again, or prod to dev and back again. The second reason that you may want to do this is because you have a new server farm, or you're moving from on-prem to the cloud, or potentially you're trying to move away from InfoPath to something else and you want to get the data out or change to a list-based form. So those are the two main reasons I can think of, and if you have more, please add those to comments and we'll share them. I want to start off with a bit of news first. Before we get into the actual demos, I want to make you aware of two new pieces of information that came up just this last week. So 365, the new SharePoint Future Vision was announced in May. We're finally seeing the libraries on 365 get converted over to the new library structure, which is kind of cool because they've got a lot of new features. Unfortunately, if you're using InfoPath forms with 365 and your library gets converted, the XML binding to InfoPath gets lost, and right now the fix is to click on Return to Classic SharePoint. So hopefully Microsoft will fix this issue, and you have a workaround for now. Just in case you're worried about this kind of breakage in the future, We do have a future-proof option. We've been working on this Form Zero thing for ages, it seems like, over 2 years now. We have a backup plan for you. It's an app that allows you to continue using your InfoPath form templates. It lets you open the apps in the browser, that you don't need InfoPath form services, so it doesn't rely on InfoPath to actually render the form, and therefore you don't have to worry about breaks. And there's a bunch of other reasons to look at it. This is our advertisement for the webinar, right? Very short little pitch here. But you can go to our product site, look at Form Zero underneath Products Tools on our Qdabra.com site, and we talk a lot about it. We've got videos up there. We've got several. We actually have double-digit customers using this now, both on-prem and in the cloud. We're not pushing it really hard yet, but we do have support for pretty much everything. There's a few controls like People Picker and Rich Text. I think those are the two main controls that do not work in Form Zero today. But we're looking at version 1.3 or 1.2 implementing those. Right now we're on version 1.1. So if you're interested in that, let us know. The second bit of news is we found this out yesterday, actually last week. We have a customer, a large customer, that is using REST-based web services to create a dashboard. So basically using InfoPath as a dashboard on top of their data in SharePoint. And we're using REST because it filters data really well. We don't need to worry about exact match. We can do, starts with or contains and filter the data very effectively. And for large data sets, that filtering that REST provides is really, really cool. But it breaks in the browser now in 2013, and this is an update that came in the last 2 or 3 months on SharePoint 2013. We're not sure exactly which update caused this behavior. We had a server that had not been updated in 3 or 4 months. It was working fine. We applied all the patches, and now it broke. And so our hunch is that one of those patches, those 2013 server updates, broke the REST stuff. Now there is a workaround. You could just switch to the filler. You could use something like QRules to filter the data. It's not a great workaround right now. So I just want you to be aware of this, that there are some regressions now with the service packs updates for SharePoint. Okay, so we're done with the news. We're going to start the main topic here, and that is talking about these 3 different scenarios. So to begin with, I'm going to show you these 3 scenarios on top today. Moving a form from one library to another, one site to another, and from one server to another. In all cases, the hierarchy is the same. And I'll talk more about what that means, but basically it's the path to the library. So it's like server / site / library, right? And that's really important. But we're probably going to skip this hierarchy different today because I want to spend a little more time investigating this. I had some demos running last night and had some weird results, and I want to run those by one of our MVPs here first before. So this is probably going to go to next week as well, but I'm going to talk about these first 3 scenarios first. And then next week, we'll discuss the difference with content types, how to move a form based in a library, like a full-on InfoPath designer form, to a list-based form. We have a tool that allows you to extract the data and move data to a list-based form, so you can use, InfoPath as a list-based editor or Nintex or one of the other list-based form technologies. Or just lists, right? Power Apps. No, not yet. Power Apps is not here. The word on the street is they hyped it in May. If you're looking at Power Apps, wait until December. We had a long discussion with Microsoft in person about this, and they're not ready for prime time yet, and that's unfortunate. But so you're not going to be migrating to Power Apps right now. List the library. If you want to add functionality to your list-based forms to make them more feature-rich, we have a lot of people moving from list to library. This will be discussed next week. And then finally, we'll talk about how to move your data into a database. So first off, first scenario here is you're going from library to library, right? And this is our picture for the library to library scenario, as you can imagine. And this is the same for the browser, the filler. So I'm going to talk about what you do first, and then I'm going to show you an example. And we'll actually see two forms I've published out to my 365 library, and we'll look at the differences between them. So first off, if you're going from one library to another, and you could just call the library you know, my form underscore production, my form underscore development. In my case, I'm using numbers. I have a task creator form. I'm going to be showing you how I did this with that. In fact, let's see if I can go there right now. I'm going to, okay, so here's my site. I just need to refresh this here. I just created this site for this webinar, and I've got a bunch of lists, and I've got a bunch of forms, one form in particular, and for the purpose of the demo today, I have one query data connection and one submit data connection. So obviously, if you're moving a form from one library to another, you don't care about the query data connection because it doesn't change. It's the same exact query data connection. In this site, I have this task creator form. Let me just go to all content here and find the right library. So, task creator, where are you? This is, oh, this is the wrong site, sorry. This is my other site. Okay, so there's my 365 site. And I've got a form, a really simple form that I created that allows me to fill out a task. So it gets my username, and I select a project. For example, I want to work on world peace, and the task is, what's the task? Kill off all men. And then the hours involved in that are probably infinite. Just kidding. Okay, but you get the idea, right? So there's our form, and so what are we doing here? So the form is querying that project list. In fact, if we go back and take a look at the project list, there's our, we can add a new item here. We can say, let's see here, stop egregious transit taxes in Seattle. Okay, that's our task, that's our project, right? And then the form just pulls from that. So the form, and I'll show this in the designer in a second. In fact, I'll do that right now. So if I actually go to this library, and as you know, we can go to library settings, and we can just look at the form by opening it up here. So that's what I'm going to do, just so you know, I'm doing this for real. And we'll edit the template. This will launch it in the InfoPath designer, and you'll see here that I've got a bunch of different versions in the background. Just ignore that for a second while this downloads. Okay, this is a little bit slow when you're pulling it down from 365. On-Prem's a little bit faster, but there's the form right here. I believe this is the form. Where is it? Okay, here it is. So this is the form I just downloaded, and you can see that I have a data connection to projects. Now this is not a UDC data connection, it's just a stock data connection to projects. I also have a submit connection which submits to the list. So this project's data connection, you can see it right there. It's HTTPS, let me just zoom in here so you can see this. I should have started this before I started the webinar, sorry about that. Okay, so we think we have Zoom it running, and you can see that the SharePoint library is just my 365 site. I have a webinar site and then a subsite underneath that, 2016-06-29 should be 30, and then task creators form library. So that's where this is pointing, and because this is going to be moved to the same site, I don't care about the query data connection, but I do care about the submit data connection because I want to continue submitting it to the existing library. So zero here is just go back and go through the publish wizard again and change it to your new library. That's the easiest. There's no automatic way to do this right now when you're going from library to library. You could automate it. You could try to automate it by having two submit connections, one for production, one for development, and then you can have a rule in your form which basically changes between them. We'll talk a little bit about content types next week. In addition, if you want to go completely dynamic, QRules, which still works in 365, the sandbox code plugin that we have, allows you to change your URL. So you could have a single submit connection, and then QRules on load could change the URL. We've talked about this in previous webinars. In fact, many years ago, 2 years ago, I think in July of 2014. we talked about this in a webinar, and you can go up to our Qdabra.com webinars and take a look at those. But that's probably not a good solution for 365 these days based on the fact that Sandbox is deprecated. If you're using on-prem, that would be a good solution. But I think that for right now, you probably want to go with option 0. So let's do this. We're going to take our form and we'll publish it out to the site then as a new form. In fact, I've already done this. So if we go to our site here, I've got Task Creator 2 on the same site. And what I've done here is I've just republished this here, and it works just fine. It should work just fine here. Let's just try it. And there's our new project. And we're going to, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? We're going to start walking. Time is unity, right? Okay, whatever. For those of you who saw the movie with Scarlett Johansson. Of course, it didn't work, right? So we got to fix it. So how do we fix it? So, and this is by design. Obviously, we want it to submit back to the library. So let's go ahead and edit this one to fix it. So we've published it to a new library, Task Creator 2. We're going to open up that form, and we're going to fix the data connection. So this is why you need to fix the submit data connection, because it will change, and specifically just go in here to main data connection, and you just go here and modify it. Now this actually is probably the wrong library. I probably picked the wrong library to show you, but the way you modify, you just go through the modification steps and just change the library. So I think I opened up the one for the second scenario. So sorry about that. Getting confused here with my scenarios. But here's the form. If we want to publish this to a new site, we just go to publish. Sorry, publish to a new library. Just go to publish, and we're going to choose SharePoint Server. And as you know, we're just going to publish it to that a new library on that site, and it's going to ask us to save it. So for the purpose of time, I think this is pretty simplistic, and people probably are not interested in this so much because it is a simple one. But just keep in mind that after you publish it, you do have to fix up that submit data connection, because it won't automatically change it. The query data connections will stay the same, but if you're submitting to the library, you will need to fix it. Okay, so if you're doing external data connections, querying web services, it gets easier. So you can actually query data from a database using a web service, and you can have dev and prod versions based on some switch in the form. One really clever technique that we use a lot, we have several customers that do this dev prod. We actually manage it for them. We use a config XML file. So the form actually loads a config XML file on open, and it's using UDCX files to get the config XML in that site. So there's like a data connections in that site. We load an XML file from basically a document library using a UDCX file. And the config XML has the definition of the web service or the database that we want to actually query. And this works really well. It requires no changes to the form, but it does require that external piece, which is a web service, database, whatever. If you're interested in this, please let us know, because we have several examples of this. We'd be happy to help you. Let's talk about the next scenario. And as you can imagine from this picture, we're talking about from site to site now. So when you're moving a form from one site to another, so just to recap, for the first scenario, you're going to basically just republish the form, and you're going to have to fix up that submit data connection. The query data connections will work just fine. For the second scenario, you can create an STP for your list. So in the list settings, you can save your list as a template, and you can create it on the new site. And then what you're going to do is you're going to convert your data connections to be relative UDC files. And the way you do that is in your data connection wizard here. Many of you have probably already done this. You just go in here and you click Convert to Connection File. And then you browse to, you have to have a data connection library. So this is very familiar to some of you. In our case, we have a data connection library on this site. So we've actually, when you convert before you convert your data connections, you're going to want to create a data connection library. Obviously, you just go to Site Contents, click on Search for Add an App, and then you're going to search for data connections. Of course, I've already done this, but I just want to show you how you find it here. And data connections. And I don't want a document library, I want to search. And then it'll give you the data connection library, so you'll create it from this app. And once you've created it, let's just go back to our site here. You'll be able to then convert your data connections. And the way, when you convert them, what it's doing is it's taking the data connection and it's saving it out here as an XML file. So in our case, we have two data connections. We have projects and we have main submit. So let's take a look at these. I have these downloaded locally, and I'm just going to show you what they look like in Notepad++. So these are pretty simple files. They essentially define the data connection. By moving the data connection outside of your form, it makes it easier to migrate. So what you're going to do is you're going to change two things. So when you move this to a new site, the first thing you do is you convert your UDCs, you create your UDCs using that Convert Data Connection Wizard. And once again, you're going to go in here, click Convert to Data Connection, and then you're going to give it that site. So we'll browse to our data connection library. And for this one, we'll call it Projects 2. So data connections, and underneath here, I'm going to call it Projects 2 because I don't want to overwrite the one I have. Okay, and I'll just click Relative. Now there's a difference here between relative and centrally managed, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that next week. But for now, I'm going to choose the recommended connection type. And it's really that easy. Once they're converted, you'll see that they show up in the library where we have them. If I refresh here, you'll see that new UDC file. And we can download it to our local machine and take a look at the contents. Now, when you move this to a new site, you're going to need to download these UDCX files and make a change to them. And that's what I want to talk about next, is that change. So when you're changing these UDCX files, you just have to change them once. That's the good news. And we'll call this Projects 2, and we'll open this up. And we're going to take a look at this in the Notepad as well, Notepad++. And this has obviously got a 629 site in there, if you can see that or not. But and it's got a GUID. So there's two things you need to change. You need to change the list ID, and you need to change the web URL. That's it. So what you're going to do is on your local machine then, you'll go in here and you'll change, you'll create your new site, you'll create your new list using an STP potentially, like we said, save your list as a template, and then you'll put the list ID for that list in here and save this UDCX file as projects 2B or whatever it is. And then, actually, you'll save as projects 2, you'll just change that, you'll change the web URL, and then you'll basically drag and drop this to the new site. So I've already done this. So if I go to Site Contents, I've got a new site here for next week called, let's see here, I do have, I need to go up a level. And so for next week, let's see if I can find this here real quick. I'm going a little bit over, and I apologize for the delay here, but there's just a lot of little stuff to show you. And okay, so I'm just going to go to my next week's site, and here I have the data connection. So what I've done is I made the change to the data connection to change that projects to point to the new projects list. And if you want to know how to get the ID, it's the easiest way to get the list ID is to go into the list settings and click on the audience, what's it called, audience targeting. And then you'll see the list ID appear in a nice format in the URL at the end. So if you look at the URL here at the top, that's my list ID, okay? So that's what you want to copy, and then what you'll do is you'll open up in Notepad++ the projects, and you'll paste in that URL. So let's see here, I've got projects open in 2 places here. So you can see here's the projects with that ID pasted in for A8, CA4, B1, and so on. And then you need to give it the new web URL. And then once you've done that, you're going to save this UDCX file and then just drag and drop it to the new library. So to show you that, you're just going to take and go to your data connections library, and we'll go back to our folder, and you just drag and drop this like that into the data connection library and replace it. Okay, so once you've done that, now you can publish your form out here as your task creator form, whatever form you have, and you can actually then essentially just run it. Now there is one thing I want to talk about, and that is that we've seen this be automatic in the past, but as of today, what you need to do is you need to do one more step, and that is you need to actually change the site collection URL in your manifest. Now, according to Hillary, or one of our top developers here, this is not required, but I could not get this to work without doing this. And basically, when you publish your form, you're going to, after you convert your UCX files, change your UCX files. You're going to change the list ID and the URL. And after you do that, you're going to need to do one more step, which is you're going to need to publish this form out as an export source files. And to do that, you're going to need to pick a location, and then once you've done that, it will extract everything into a folder. Once you have that, you're going to need to go into the manifest, and you're going to need to edit 2 values. It's pretty easy, actually. The data connections are, if you just search for connectoid, you'll see that there's 2 data connections in my manifest. The manifest is what describes the InfoPath form template. And you can see that both of them have a source, which is what we need to change. Even though the site collection here is relative, this is not. This is hard-coded. So you need to actually change this from 629, as you can see I've already changed it, to 707 to get it to work. Otherwise it won't pull in the right UDCX files. So that's a bit of a pain, but that's what you need to do. And then once you've done that, what you need to do is open this manifest in the designer. You right-click, you edit in designer, and then publish it from there. So that's a lot of stuff to digest probably. But bottom line is the UDCs do make it a little bit easier. You just have to change them once, and then you're good to go. There is that additional step of changing the manifest. That's just a one-time deal. Every time you publish back to development, you'll have to do that. It's a bit of a hassle, but I don't know a way around it. After the call today, I'm going to talk to Hillary and see if she has a better way around it. But that's what I discovered. Now, finally, the third technique is when you're moving from one server to another. And in this technique, I'm just going to quickly touch on this and then talk more about it in next week's webinar. But the relative UDCXs will not work. InfoPath will make a mess out of it because the URLs are different. But what will work is this publishing wizard dialog will actually sense that you're trying to go from one site to another, and it will ask you if you want to fix up the data connections. So definitely do that. And so if you're using a non-UDCX version of your form template, and you don't want to be using UDCXs, trust me on this, you just publish from one form library on one server to another form library on another server. It will automatically fix up everything, and everything will work just fine. So you won't have to go into the manifest and do any of that. So those are the 3 techniques. I've demoed 2 of them. If you get questions, now's a great time to ask. Like I said, we are going to be touching upon this again next week. In fact, I'll be talking about this again, going over this, probably spend a little more time on it next week. These are the topics for next week. So I'll be going back, talking a little bit more about these scenarios, see if we can see if Hillary gives me a simplification. And then next week I'll be covering a couple other scenarios, which is how to migrate your data if they're content types, and everything is a content type behind the scenes, but it's a little bit different when it's a content type that's mapped to site columns. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how to extract data from your library form and create a list form. we'll talk about the converse and then moving data out of your library altogether into a database. And we can also touch upon any topics that you say you want more demo on. So we've got a survey at the end. If you don't have any questions, I wish you a wonderful day and a happy 4th of July. It's Independence Day in the U.S. here. That's my quick demo for today. Any questions? We have questions. Okay, great. So let's see who's asking a question. Devin's asking a question. Is it possible to create a submit data connection on a cloud form to an on-prem list, essentially an extranet? Yeah, if they have access to both, then you can do that. So if you have a form that is trying to submit to the different lists, you just configure the submit. Now what's going to happen is it's going to be cross-site, so the form is going to need to be full trust. Now you can create a certificate. In fact, if you have Visual Studio, you can create a certificate that doesn't expire until 2036, and hopefully by that time we won't have to worry about any of this, right? But Hillary did this the other day. We had a customer that is using a full trust form on the web because it's cross-site. So whenever you go between two sites, you need to have a full trust form, and the way to do that is in the form, you just go into security and you click on, what is it, full trust. You just say, no, I'm in full trust. Then you have to attach a signature, a certificate to it. By default, the certificate will be 1 month, as you see there, right? Which isn't very helpful because then you have to republish every month. But you can use Visual Studio to create a certificate that will expire in 20 years. And that's very helpful because then you don't have to worry about that. So yeah, Devin, to do that, you'll need to change your form to full trust using that certificate. And people will get a pop-up. They just have to click yes, and then you can do that. Any other questions for me today? I really appreciate everyone being here. We do have a quick survey. It's like 4 or 5 questions and some humor. So stick around for that, and we'll send you the PowerPoint deck as well as the sample files. And let's see, one more question here, or comment from David. My dev environment is a VM, and I edit the host file on the VM so that it has the same name as my prod farm. Yes, that's a good, so when you say host file, I'm not sure what you're talking about, but oh, I see what you're saying. So you're actually changing it so it looks like your prod farm. Yeah, that's actually a good idea too. It does require a little more of the DevE skills. You have to be a system admin type and know where the host file is. But yeah, you can certainly fake it and fake your dev environment into looking like prod, and that's actually a good point. So David has that point, which is you can just go into your VM, change the host file, make it look like it's production, and then the URLs don't need to change at all. And the URLs, the data connections, are the big issue when you're moving from one site to another, especially if those data connections are local. Once again, if they're external web service calls, database calls, no big deal. Great comment. Well, that's it for today. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend and happy 4th of July. We'll be here next week to talk more about migration. Once again, if you have any feedback, please let us know. We're here for you. Have a wonderful one.